All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Chilling with Nestor. In today's episode, well, there's not an episode, right? But yeah. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about cryptocurrencies, talking a little bit about NFTs. Should you invest? Should you not invest? What am I doing with my money? And maybe you might learn a thing or two. Now, first things first, we need to define what cryptocurrency is. When you think cryptocurrency, just think ledger system. Cryptocurrencies use the blockchain, which is a mechanism of cryptography that allows you to just keep tracks of what's going on in the network. Now, that sounds very, very complicated, but whenever you think blockchain or cryptocurrencies, just think of a ledger system. That's the easiest way you can explain it. And it literally allows people in the internet to keep a ledger system of the monetary system that we have today. Very simple. Right? So whenever there's a transaction, it's not registered by the person and the other counterparty, but it's transacted by everybody that is a part of the network. So the more people are in the network, the more trust you have in all the transactions that happen in that network. That's what happens with Bitcoin. When you start going in Ethereum starts getting a little bit more complicated because we're now talking about smart contracts and how those smart contracts can influence the economic space that we see. Ethereum is very important because it has smart contracts. So it's not only the transaction of currency in this case, but it's the transaction of contracts. The transaction of assets can be incorporated within the blockchain, which allows for a broader use of the technology. Now, interestingly enough, the use of non-fungible tokens, whenever you hear non-fungible, just think single unit that cannot be replaced. Now, it's interesting enough because right now, non-fungible tokens are being used in the Ethereum network through smart contracts in order to allocate assets from one person to another. If a creator makes an asset, example, a piece of art, and then decides to sell that piece of art, he can do it through the blockchain and give ownership to that person. But the way that he sells that contract is very interesting because he can add special things to that contract. And that's the interesting thing about NFTs. NFTs allow you to have a contract or a token in this case that will have a certain set of rules applied to every time there is an exchange between one person or another. So yeah, when you think of non-fungible tokens, think unique. So that's why NFTs are blowing up right now, because in this art space it's very hard to prove whether a piece of art is real or it's fake. But NFTs will ensure that the piece of art that you're purchasing is real, at least if it's coming from the person that has owned it before and originally comes from the artist. So you can trace the starting point of that asset, which is very interesting in a lot of different classes. Because if we have, for example, like a piece of land, right? Like you'll be buying the piece of land from the right person and you can minimize the cost added to that. Let's talk about right now my current investment. And right now I have about 10% of my portfolio in cryptocurrencies. Now I can't talk about specifics, but it's about 10% of my portfolio. And it used to be, I started with only 5%, a 5% allocation, right? So the value of my total 100% net value, only 5% of that is going into cryptocurrencies, and it has grown to 10%, right? So it's a substantial amount of my portfolio at the moment, and it used to be bigger, but with the current crash that we had, we've seen that go down. Now, how I divide my crypto assets is what I call them, right? I have many different tokens that I use, and I'm basically using the biggest by market cap just because there's a lot more liquidity in those markets. But yeah, I'll show like a distribution right now, right here. And this is like the pie chart and how my assets are distributed. And if you have any questions, just put them down below. Don't forget to hit that like button as well if you're already down there, right? If you have any questions about any crypto projects that I might be able to add. Also, I might try to bring my brother into the next video to maybe talk about a little bit more about other crypto projects that he's into, because he's a little bit more diversified. I'm participating in mostly Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, Ripple, and I have a couple of different projects that I'm supporting. Now, I'm definitely looking at NFTs as a potential way to diversify my portfolio, but this will not be like my allocation into NFTs is not going to be more than 1 to 2% of my overall portfolio, just because it's speculative assets. I still believe that NFTs as a contract will be very useful, right? And having the technology available right now will allow many creators to benefit from the use of this technology, and it will allow them to sell their content in a way that can benefit them, right? So imagine an artist selling his songs or ownership of his songs through an NFT, and the person that buys that, right, that allows them to maybe invest in the artist will get like a cutback from that. Or an artist that will create a piece of art, and anytime that art sells in the open market, he gets a portion of that money back to reinvest in future art, right? So there are many different uses. And one of the things that I was thinking, and do guys let me know if you're interested in this, but I've been currently looking at an NFT as sort of like a way to monetize or commoditize my time, right? So I was thinking of creating maybe 10 NFTs that will be 10 hours of my life defined by the NFT, and I would sell them, allowing people to have an hour of my time a month, and then they would be able to come to me and talk to me about like their investments, financial advice, anything of the sort that I can help with, right? And then it'd be a commodity because you'll be able to sell that to somebody else that needs it, right? And maybe it'll be 5 hours, maybe it'll be 2 hours. I'm thinking of the sort, but right now the fees in the NFT space are pretty crazy. Another thing that's very, very important is how institutions are coming into the crypto space. A lot of institutions are realizing that the American dollar is losing a lot of value. So if you look at the US index here, you see that the value of the dollar has actually gone down in the past year, right? It has actually, if you look at the value of the dollar now, you'll see that the value of the dollar in the past year has actually decreased, which means that people are looking to move their value into other assets that are actually holding their value better. So in this case, Bitcoin, if you look at the relationship between the US dollar and Bitcoin is actually increased in value. So it's a better store of value, right? So that's another use that cryptocurrencies may have. Interestingly enough, right, when you look at cryptocurrencies, like, yes, it's money that you have to be willing to lose. And it's a matter of, if you're trying to make a profit, and sure, there's a lot of volatility in this space, but it's risky, right? And the money that I would suggest you put in, because I am in it, right? So like, I vouch for it, but you have to be willing or okay with losing that amount, and make sure it's not all of your life savings. Because the moment you start putting everything inside, you're putting your money in a roller coaster, and the market does go up, does go down, and it can go down 60% in a day, as we saw in the past couple of weeks, right? So it's still very risky and volatile. So you have to be okay with looking at that money and saying, okay, like, I'm willing to let this grow and become a substantial part of my portfolio, but I also have to take the consideration that this may also go to zero, and maybe there is no government regulation that actually upholds the value of NFTs or upholds the value of cryptocurrencies in the broader market like China is doing, right? So these things can actually affect the legitimacy of cryptocurrencies, but I do believe they're here to stay, because it's a monetary system. And me coming from Venezuela has taught me that a monetary system owned by the few can be destroyed. For example, the Venezuelan Bolivar. The Venezuelan Bolivar has lost all of its value and has over 1,000% inflation, and the value keeps going down and down and down. Cryptocurrencies offer something different, right? Because this is an international currency that is not only owned by a country, but owned by many different people in many different countries. If we show the Google trend of Bitcoin alone, we see that actually people own cryptocurrencies in many different places. The more people use cryptocurrencies, the more value it has, right? Because it's a monetary system, right? So in the monetary system, it's like the more people use the dollar, the more value the dollar has. The more people use the pound, the more value the pound has. So similar to any other currency, the more people start using these projects, the more value they have, similar to companies and similar to many different things. Interestingly enough, right, like when we look at NFTs, we're looking at how assets can be redistributed, right? And when we look at cryptocurrencies, is like how assets or value can be redistributed in this ledger, or it can be analyzed in this ledger. Just to finalize this, it's pretty simple, right? Like, I do believe in cryptocurrencies long term. We may see extreme volatility. NFTs are here to stay, but be very careful in this space. I would consider it to be a very high risk trade. NFTs do come with a very interesting proposal, which is the fact that assets can be transacted within this ledger system and reduce the cost of that transaction to minimal. If we look at, for example, the buying of a house, when you buy a house, the cost of the lawyer alone will rack you 2% of the house, depending on what it is. So $1,000, $2,000. So when you look at the fees that you're paying within crypto assets, it's really not that crazy. But that's maybe for something else and another day. I would say be careful with altcoins. Make sure you do your own due diligence. I am not a financial advisor. Do your own research. And as always, stay smart. By the way, this episode is sponsored by Scotch and Stocks. The reason I have this is, and it's only one whiskey, is because we've only done one episode where we drink whiskey, and this is the mystery whiskey that we're going to be drinking on the next episode. So hit that subscribe if you want to watch more. All right. Just to add a couple of things here. The definition for the blockchain is interesting. A distributed ledger technology, which offers a new approach to recording the ownership of assets. Now, that's what the interesting thing about blockchain is. In this case, Bitcoin, if countries start using Bitcoin, oh my God, like we have companies right now using Bitcoin. If we could get countries using Bitcoin, wow. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned. Don't forget to hit that like button. Hit the subscribe as well if you want to see another episode of Scotch and Stocks. And if you want to just find out where the fuck we're putting our money, because, it's a little bit interesting, the fact that I'm spending most of my time doing this, maybe you make some money too. Stay goddamn sexy. All right.